Hi, I'm Kerry Cunningham, and welcome to another episode of the Science of B2B. I head up research and thought leadership here at 6 Sense, and I'm a former Forrester and Serious Decisions analyst. So today I'm really excited. This is going to be a little different episode of the Science of B2B. I'm going to walk you through a presentation to introduce a new concept. Now, in full disclosure, this is not my concept. I didn't come up with this by myself. In fact, I didn't come up with it. This is a concept that my friend Lisa Cole, who's the CMO at 2X, came up with. But I was there in the conversation with her when she did it. And I thought it was such a brilliant idea that I really wanted to collaborate with her on that. And I got a chance to do that. So I'd like to talk to you about that today. Now, this concept that we're talking about, we call it brand gravity. And it's a really interesting concept. But to understand why it's important, got to understand a little bit of the background. So the background, a lot of it comes from the research that we've done. We know that buying processes are rare. They don't happen that often. And they take a long time. So in B2B, the average buying process is about 11 and a half months. And there are very few things that B2B organizations sell that take less than 2 quarters for a potential customer to actually buy. If we think about all of the accounts that might be in market at any given time for your solution, it's probably just somewhere between 30 and 50% of the accounts that are great fit accounts. They're perfect fit for you. The vast majority of those will not be in market now or anytime soon. And because companies go into market when they have a business need that they recognize and can put budget toward solving, you're not really going to change the fact that they're in budget, not in a short time anyway. If they're not in market right now, they're probably not going to be anytime soon. And then finally, as I said, buying is really rare. Now, our research on our customer base, looking across 600 of our customers, finds that their prospects are in market only between 2 and 5% of the time to buy in any given quarter, right down to that last part of the buying process where they're going to buy, very small percentage of buyers. All right, so there are some things, though, that we have to understand if we're going to successfully navigate this environment that we're in. And one is that there's an association between mental states that your buyer is in, a condition that your buyer is in, and what you have to do as a brand. So it might sound kind of theoretical, but it's really pretty simple. So first of all, if you're going to be effective at marketing to organizations, those organizations have to know you exist. Now, that's a kind of a truism and very simple, but there's a piece of data that backs this up, and that is that buyers say that they put 4 out of the 5 vendors they're going to evaluate on the short list on day 1 of their buying journey. So if they don't know you already on day 1 of the buying journey, your chances of selling them something later on are dramatically lower. Second, not only do they have to know you, but they have to associate you and your company with a problem that they're trying to solve, the business challenge that you address. Now, if you're a smaller company with one solution, but you're pretty well known in your space, this is less of a problem. It's the same problem as awareness. But if you're a company that has multiple solutions, you know that it's the case that sometimes one solution is very well known and associated to the business problem, but another of your solutions may not be at all. Right? So this is something that you have to solve and have to solve it at the solution level. And then finally, and this is something we don't think about in B2B very much at all, your brand has to be something that is attractive to your buyers. Now, attractive doesn't necessarily mean pretty to look at. It doesn't necessarily mean that it sounds or smells great or something like that, as it might in a consumer product. But it does mean that it literally has to be attractive to the audience that you're trying to engage. So if you're selling to marketers, being attractive to marketers will mean one thing. If you're selling to engineers, it probably will mean something completely different. But whatever that is, you have to be it. Otherwise, you're not likely to win your share of the deals. Now, this idea is talked about in great detail in this book that Lisa has just come out with called Brand Gravity. And it really is about changing the way that we think about marketing, not just chasing leads, chasing MQLs, but using this concept of brand gravity to keep the buyers that you want to sell to in orbit around your brand so that when they go into market, they find you and you're on that short list. So we'll dig into this a little bit now and talk about what this brand gravity is. And you can see this little kind of equation on the screen now. Brand gravity equals brand mass plus brand proximity. So we'll tell you what that is as we get into this. Brand gravity is I want you to think about this as the force that increases awareness, availability, and affinity, which I'm going to talk about in just a minute, but increases the likelihood that your buyers know who you are, that they associate you with the business problem that you solve, and that they actually like you and are interested in spending time learning about you and actually being with your brand. The idea of brand gravity is to keep those companies that you want to sell to close, to keep them coming to your website, to keep them looking at your content, to keep them associated with things that you're associated with, so that when they go into market, they're already being influenced by you. This brand gravity, brand mass, and brand proximity we'll talk about. Brand mass means you've got things that are drawing those buyers to you. Brand proximity means that you're where they are, right? You're in their marketplace, you're participating in the community that they're part of. If you're serving engineers, then you sponsor things or you're in places where those engineers are. If you're serving marketers, then you're in the places where marketers are, so that they're continually seeing you and hopefully interacting with things that you're making available to them. So some examples of this. Mass, as I said, draws buyers to you. It increases awareness, availability, and affinity by having you around. Now, the things that contribute to that, the tactics, actions, and strategies that attract a brand into your orbit are things that have mass, that bring things toward you. They create that gravity. So your brand marketing, PR, press coverage, analyst reports, and then marketing that you do, all of those things have the ability to bring your potential buyers into your orbit. They don't always, they do it when those things are executed well, right? If you have press coverage, but it's negative press coverage, that's not increasing your mass, it's decreasing your mass, right? If you have analyst reports that put you on the bottom of the list, that's going to decrease your mass. But if you have those things and they say good things about you, that is going to increase your brand mass the way that we're talking about it, right? So that makes sense. Proximity, as I said, it's things that put you near your buyers. So one of the great ways to do that would be to sponsor communities. And that's something that 6th Sense does. We sponsor a CMO community. Now, CMOs love this community, get a lot of value from it. 6th Sense doesn't pitch at this. We're not selling in this, but we sponsor something. We're there in a place where our buyers are getting value from something that we're doing. We're there present in the community that we serve. Also, things like advertising, of course, puts you in proximity to your buyers. Sponsorships of other kinds put you in proximity to your buyers, so they're continually being made aware of your presence, right? So all of these things that we can do to make sure that we're there in mind of our buyers are things that we ought to be doing. All right. So one of the cool things about this framework is that we can kind of graph it out. So when we think about awareness, you can have low awareness or high awareness. Now, this is absolutely critical. You cannot be effective in B2B if your buyers don't know you exist, or in any other kind of business. And since we know that buyers put 4 of the 5 vendors they're going to evaluate on the short list on day one, that's what makes this so important. Availability is kind of like awareness, but it's more specific. So there's really 2 kinds of availability, physical and mental availability. Physical availability would be more applicable to a physical product. Can I get that thing? Is it nearby? Is it in a store? Is it someplace where I could access it? But it may also speak to the price of your solution, or the ability of your solution to integrate with other solutions that a company might have. So you might have the greatest solution in the world, but if it doesn't integrate in the environment that in our company, then you don't have good mental or physical, rather, availability for that solution. Mental availability is a little easier to think about in a lot of ways. In other words, do I come to mind when you have the problem that I solve? That's mental availability. So to do that, you need to be a big brand in your space, at least within the very confines of the problem that you're solving. And then finally, affinity. And this is something that I think we need to talk about a lot more in B2B. Affinity means literally they like you. You're associated with good things in the mind of your buyer. We don't think about this very much, but it's something I think we need to think about a lot more, because if a buyer likes you, if they would like to hang out with your brand, if they think of you as being like them, they are going to be inclined to like what you say about your product and your solutions. It creates a sort of confirmation bias on the part of your buyers. And what mental availability means is that I am motivated to look favorably on the things that you're telling me and the things that I'm hearing and seeing and reading about you. So yes, it's a form of confirmation bias. We all engage in motivated reasoning all the time. And I've got an article out on LinkedIn about that we'll link in the notes to this session. But that's a really important thing that brand marketing does, is cause that motivated reasoning on the part of your buyers. So cool thing about this is that we can assess our own brands based on these three pillars. And so, for instance, you might be a company that has high availability and high awareness, but people don't really like you. There are a lot of brands like that, and they'll differ for different people. But three I can think of that kind of get a bad rap out in the marketplace, but they're everywhere, are Meta, Uber, and United Airlines. Now, you may like any of those three, no offense intended, but those folks get a lot of bad publicity and they're everywhere. Right? So everybody knows them, everybody's aware of them, but not everybody likes them, right? So they've got that kind of issue to solve. Another type would be you're not really very good at being available. Your awareness is high, everybody knows you exist, and people like you, right? So not a lot of great examples in B2B, but perhaps good examples in B2B would be solutions that are considered very expensive or very resource heavy, that require a lot of resources, but which have a very good reputation and everybody knows about, right? So expensive solutions that a lot of the market would think they can't afford or don't have the skills or resources to deal with. It's pretty easy to think of them in more of our consumer life. It's that restaurant you hear great things about, but you can't get into, right? That's a situation just like this one. You don't want to be this, right? So you don't want to be a brand that has low awareness, low availability, and low affinity. Nobody knows about you. They don't associate you with the problem, but if they know anything about you, they don't like you. We definitely don't want to be that. You could also be a brand that is well liked, but not available and not many people know it. I think of this as the Burning Man of brands. I think the people who do Burning Man love it. It's not a thing that most people want or could do. And probably most people just don't even know it exists, right? And then, of course, there are lots of things in between. And probably most brands fit somewhere in between on these axes where you're kind of well known, people more or less associate you with the problems that you solve, and people kind of like you. But by using this framework, I think we can see what we really want to get to is this, where we're scoring high on all three of these axes so that people are aware of us, they know the problems that we solve, and they're inclined to want to do business with us, to want to be associated with us. That's what we're really trying to cause when we do this. So we're putting together a brand gravity framework assessment, and we have that available. We'll have a link in the description of the video below and post here so that you can go for yourself, assess where you sit on these three dimensions. I think that can really help you understand what things are you going to need to do as a brand to increase the gravity of that brand, to increase the likelihood that your buyers are not only going to be aware of you, but are going to associate you to the right problems, be there, be available for you, but also that they'll have high affinity. How you go about doing that, I think, is really, really important. So thank you all. I know this has been a long episode of the Science of B2B, but I hope it's useful, and we look forward to seeing you down on the next episode of the Science of B2B.